Well, welcome back to C Files, folks. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And in this video, we will be back into the book, The Battle for Christmas by Stefan Nessenbaum. And this is what it looks like. Pulitzer Prize finalist. And I've been delayed because these winter storms have been coming through, and I got really busy taking care of things. And so um, I'm gonna try to get back to it. We've got one more possibility of some foul weather tomorrow, actually, but it looks like it's going to be not too bad. It's going to ease up. So hopefully I can get back to the regular routine again. When we were reading the last time out of page 206 and 207, there was a controversy, the brewing among the Unitarians of the 1800s. Pestalozzian um, theology and Unitarianism was basically an idea, as a concept, that children are inherently good. They're not inherently evil or bad, that they need discipline, harsh discipline and guidance and all of that. But that children are to be listened to, and children have insight, and children naturally will gravitate toward goodness if you if you if you water that seed of goodness in them, and it grows into this beautiful plant of a good life and a good person. Um, the Unitarians were split on that. Some Unitarians really vehemently disagreed with it and were saying that no, that's not the case. Children need discipline, they need guidance because they inherently want to do things which are bad. So there was that split in Unitarianism. Well, what does that have to do with Christmas? Well, it played into the gift giving to children and how that is to be done, and a big controversy over that. So having that little bit of background, let's pick up at the bottom of page 207, see if we can't finish out the chapter. The issue came to a head at Christmas. Here was the one occasion on which even those parents who held to the more traditional idea of child rearing tended to give up any real effort to maintain what Elizabeth Hillary Sedgwick called the balance between restraint and indulgence. Christmas had long been the kind of occasion on which restraint of whatever sort was momentarily suspended and indulgence ruled. In a different culture, a world of scarcity, with seasonal cycles of plenitude, the axis along which that shift took place was one that involved a brief period of gluttonous feasting or similar forms of revelry. In contrast, for genteel Unitarian families who inhabited a world of relative abundance, that axis involved a similarly brief period of undammed affection for their children, an affection made manifest in a lavish orgy of gift giving. Back in 1827, I'm sure you get folks remember 1820. No, you don't. Okay. Back in 1827, Charles Follin, then a newcomer to America, had a conversation with a friend about the celebration of Christmas in Germany. Follin excuse me. Follin laminated that there were no feasts for the children in the United States. Such festivals for the feelings, he mused, would be a great improvement of the moral state of the nation. As we know, even as Folan spoke, this kind of festival was becoming more widespread. 1827 was the very year that Clement Clarke Moore's poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, was widely printed for the first time. But even among those who, like Elizabeth Ellery Sedgwick, were ordinarily anxious about the dangers of such indulgence. Christmas functioned as a momentary release from that anxiety, a festival for the feelings. Mrs. Sedgwick herself offers a case in point. Near the second half of 1835, she was deeply concerned about her oldest child, a 10-year-old boy named Ellery. Young Ellery had been placed in the trustworthy care of his Aunt Elizabeth Dwight Sedgwick, the critic of Bronson Alcott, and author of the aforementioned 1833 Christmas story. But he was showing worrisome signs of moral weakness. On one occasion, he asked his mother to give him a silver pencil. Characteristically, she refused, suggesting instead that the boy buy himself a wooden one, learn to take care of it, and then you shall deserve a better kind of one, and shall have it. Far worse, his Aunt Elizabeth had caught him cheating systematically on his Latin homework, and then lying about the matter when he was confronted with it. All that autumn, the boy's parents carried on an an intensive correspondence about how to handle the matter. I'll say it again. All that autumn, the boy's parents carried on an intensive correspondence about how to handle the matter. Elizabeth Ellery Sedgwick endured sleepless nights on her son's account. I am mortified and distressed, and fear I have been unfaithful to him, for these faults come back to the mother. But at Christmas, the parents' pent up anxiety was released in a torrent of affection, as both father and mother wrote letters assuring their errant son, still away at school with his aunt, of how intensely they missed him. We miss you dreadfully, dear El, every hour of the day. And letting him know that they had actually set up a table filled with presents for him to show where he would be if he was here. Mr. Sedgwick even chose to let Ellery know that his mother was shedding tears over her letter as she wrote it. All this was hardly the kind of treatment that Elizabeth Dwight Sedgwick Young, Ellery's aunt and teacher, had proposed in the Christmas story she had published 2 years earlier. For followers of Pestalozzi, the impulse to make Christmas a child-focused festival of the feelings was reinforced in 1833 with the publication in Philadelphia of a biography of the Swiss reformer. He had died 4 years earlier. In the middle of that book, the biographer Edward Bibber, by name, chose to insert a chapter bearing the title Christmas Eve Discourse. This was simply the transcript of a talk, a passionate, rhapsodic talk that Pestalozzi had delivered in 1810 on Christmas Eve to the children and fellow teachers at his school in Verdun. Judging from the context, it would seem that Pestalozzi gave the talk just before distributing presents to his pupils. And it is probable that those presents were hanging from a Christmas tree. The editor of the English language edition of Bibber's biography felt compelled to offer a footnote for his British and American readers, explaining that in German-speaking regions, the presents would be placed on Christmas trees, young fir stems lighting up with little wax tapers on the twigs of which all the glittering gifts are hung. He went on to explain that when German children asked who had put their presents on the Christmas tree, they were told the Christ child brought them. It is just such a scene that we might imagine as Pestalozzi explained the holy significance of Christmas Eve. He addressed his rhapsodic words directly to the children of Verdun, insisting that it was they who formed the core of his household. Beloved children, it is for your sakes that we are united in one family. Our house is your house, and for your sakes only is it our house. In a way, those words would have sounded familiar enough, at least during the Christmas season, when people in authority were used to deferring symbolically to those who at other times of the year would have owed deference to them. It is not difficult to imagine Washington Irving's old Squire Bracebridge using the same ornate phrasing, but substituting the poor for the children. But Pestalozzi meant something more than that. He meant that children were the center of the household, not only in a symbolic fashion, not only on this ritual occasion, but that they constituted the actual and enduring center of the household. In part, that was because the training of children was what families were all about. But it was also because, and here Pestalozzi's radicalism surfaced. The very training of children was ultimately designed to nurture the seeds of innocent perfection with which they had been endowed at birth. In other words, children properly raised offered an actual model for adults to imitate. Adults, Pestalozzi felt, needed to become like children. We know that except we be converted and become as little children, except we be elevated to the simplicity of a childlike mind, we shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. And he continued by pleading for their childish spirit to redeem the very imperfections of their adult teachers. Children, let the graces of childhood elevate our souls, and purify us of all contamination of anger and wrath and hastiness in your education. The spirit of Christmas might help to accomplish that inner transformation. The presents that parents gave their children on Christmas might help them reverence the spirit of childhood in their own children. Oh, Pestalozzi mused, that we might all be like unto our children, to whom the invisible love of God is made manifest in the Christ child under the form of an instant of an back up. I'm gonna try it again. Sorry, folks. Oh, Pestalozzi mused, that we might all be like our. I'm gonna pause and restart. I don't edit. If I goof up, you know about it. So you get the outtakes in the middle of everything. Here we go. Oh, Pestalozzi mused, that we might all be like unto our children, to whom the invisible love of God is made manifest in the Christ child under the form of an innocent babe, like unto them in appearance, but descending from heaven with pleasant gifts. Whew, got through it. Okay, here we go. That we might all be like unto our children. What Pestalozzi ultimately wished to achieve was the reformation of adults. He completely flipped everything and reversed it. Children are more mature than adults, is basically what he was saying. But in order for that to come about, children themselves had to play the role they had been assigned. Their joy had to be innocent joy. They had to experience Christmas with what Pestalozzi constantly referred to with the word simplicity. And you, my beloved children who celebrate this Christmas in the simplicity of your hearts, what shall I say to you? We wish to be partakers of your simplicity, of your childlike joy. That is throat tea because my throat gets dry as I'm reading. Pestalozzi wished very deeply to believe. In fact, he committed his life to the venture that the hearts of children were simpler and purer than those of adults. But even as he was speaking, the assembly, the assembled children were waiting to receive their Christmas presents, gifts that were probably hanging on a Christmas tree at that very moment. I'm not sure exactly what was innocent about such childlike joy, but its connection with material expectations surely was and remains troubling. And this despite the efforts of parents to disguise the nature of the gifts by attributing them to such transcendent figures as Saint Nicholas, or even, as Pestalozzi and German culture had it, the Christ child himself. Whether it took a Pestalozzian form or the more conservative shape represented by Elizabeth Dwight Sedgwick, Unitarian pedagogy contained a serious internal contradiction. It attempted to, it attempted to teach children to be selfish, but it did so while placing them, there's a dash, by placing them at the center of the domestic universe. It was a heavy burden to place on children. At one point near the end of his talk, Pestalozzi himself hesitated and actually urged the children in his audience to conform to his definition to become more childlike. Be ye innocent children in the full sense of the word. Let this festival establish you in the holy strength of a childlike mind. The holy strength of a childlike mind. Under the weight of this definition, it was surely difficult to grow up as an actual child. Perhaps as difficult in its own way as it was to grow up as a child whose will was being broken by physical or psychological abuse. Now, this next section is from from Belsnickel to Christ Kingle. From Belsnickel to Christ Kingle. As it happens, a short story that was published in the 1836 edition of a gift book, The Pearl, deals with these questions. The title of the story was The Christmas Tree, and its author, for once, was not a Sedgwick, was identified simply as Mrs. G. The story is about using a Christmas tree to teach children a hard lesson. How not to be selfish on the occasion of a holiday that was centered around making them happy. The author, a Philadelphian, lets us know where she got the idea for the Christmas tree. It came from a book I have lately read, and speaking of the celebration of Christmas by the Germans. In a footnote, that book is identified as Bibber's Life of Pestalozzi. The Christmas tree deals with a prosperous, child-centered family, the Selwyns. The author lets us know on the first page just where on the ideological spectrum this couple's hearts lay. Mr. and Mrs. Selwyn were very affectionate parents, and nothing gave them greater pleasure than to gratify the wishes of their children. And their daughter, Mary, has great expectations of the Christmas holiday. The story opens almost 2 weeks before Christmas with young Mary asking her mother how long she has to wait until the big day arrives. How much I wish it was here, she exclaims. When Mrs. Sedgwick, I'm sorry, when Mrs. Selwyn asks why she is so eager, Mary replies without hesitation, because I expect to get a great many presents. Mrs. Selwyn responds non-committedly, I will make no rash promises. Christmas is almost 2 weeks off, and you know, many things may happen before that time. Of course, Mr. and Mrs. Selwyn are plotting a surprise. They had been planning a Christmas celebration a few evenings before, and they thought of following the German custom and making it a surprise by keeping the preparations a secret. They have made their preparations in the drawing room, which is ordinarily kept locked and off limits to the children, who therefore had no suspicion of the treat their kind parents had in store for them. Young Mary is a little disappointed that her mother had said nothing about a party, but she consoled herself by counting how many presents she expected to get. Christmas Day brings Mary one disappointment after another. The family goes through its standard rituals, but none of these yields a single present. First, Mary tries an old game before sunrise. Mary and her brothers were up and dressed and ran into their parents' room to catch them by calling out Christmas gift, knowing that according to the old custom, if they could say it before their parents, they were entitled to a present. These tactics, this tactic fails to produce any results. Say it again. This tactic fails to produce any results. Later that morning, the family goes to visit their grandfather's country estate, where they always dined on Christmas Day. But on their arrival, the children are once again disappointed. There were no presents on the table. Again, they console themselves, this time with the thought that they would get them after dinner. And again, they're disappointed. At last, toward evening, the family sets out for home. On the way, little Mary burst into tears, sobbing that she had never spent such a dull Christmas in her life. Finally, Mr. Selwyn chimes in. I am sorry, my daughter, to see that you have so little fortitude of being disappointed. He gently but firmly expresses disappointment in her behavior. Every effort that has been made by your kind relatives to amuse you and make you happy has been entirely lost merely because you could not have every wish gratified. That is the bad news. The good news begins as soon as the Selwyns reach their house. Now the children are told to dress up. They are led to the parlor, where they are delighted to find a little party of their young friends, who had been invited by Mrs. Selwyn. The children play party games. These include chair of criticism, cross questions, and silly answers, and ladies' toilet. It is in the midst of these that the denouement is reached. Mr. Selwyn asks the children to come with him to the drawing room. The scene is just what we had come to expect. A Christmas tree. Quote, upon those throwing upon, uh, I'm sorry. Upon his throwing open the drawing room door An universal exclamation of delight burst from their lips at the beautiful sight presented to them. In the center of the room was a large table covered with a damask cloth. And in the middle of this was placed a Christmas tree, brilliantly illuminated with wax tapers, and suspended to the branches were all kinds of beautiful gifts. The trick has worked. By evening's end, little Mary Selwyn has experienced the most delightful Christmas of her young life, and she has been taught an important lesson at the same time. The key, even more than the Christmas tree itself, is the element of surprise that accompanies it. The Selwyns, we are told, were following the German custom in making it a surprise by keeping the preparations a secret. It is indeed the case. In Christmas tree references from the 1820s and 1830s, both in stories set in America and in reports from Germany, that Christmas trees are invariably set up in a room that is normally off limits to the children, the library, the parlor, or, as here, the drawing room. In real life, obviously, the surprise factor would be effective only once or twice. After that, the ritual would retain a lingering utility. It would continue to keep virtually total control of the gift exchange in the hands of the parents, control of the time and place, and of the knowledge of how many gifts there would be and what they were. Frequently, permission for the children to enter the till then secret room is signified by the ringing of a bell. In one instance, the children cannot enter until the third time the bell is rung. In this 1836 story, we might say the Christmas tree ritual was explicitly represented as a tactic by which the parents might seize total control of the gift exchange. The main part of the tale consists of a series of disappointments for its little anti-heroine, moments at which her expected presents do not appear. The first of these moments is especially striking. It is when the children catch their parents by calling out Christmas gift, knowing that according to the old custom, if they say it before the parents, they were entitled to a present. This is a ritual we will encounter again in chapter 7, where it will be performed by slaves in the antebellum South. But now the old ritual leads to nothing. It is only at the very end of the day, after several more such disappointments, and when the children have ceased to expect anything at all, that the carefully orchestrated surprise of the Christmas tree is sprung. The difference, I'm trying to see how far I have to go in. Okay. All right. The difference between the ritual of crying out Christmas gift and that of waiting for the Christmas tree is a difference between children playing the role of active agents in the gift exchange and they're assuming the passive role of silent, grateful recipients. The Christmas tree ritual, as it is introduced into American reading public, was designed to render children completely passive passive participants in the process. Just so, as we will see in the next chapter, just so as we will see in the next chapter, were new rituals of Christmas charity designed to make poor people themselves passive precipitants of largesse. The Christmas tree ritual had another lingering effect. That effect was a hidden one. Hidden, I suspect, even among those who had adopted the ritual. It was to manipulate children's behavior, perhaps even their feelings, in a new way. At the end of the story, we have just examined the Christmas tree. There is a kind of explanatory epilogue in which the father Mr. Salwin, or Mr. Selwyn, I should say, places his new ritual in historical context when he himself was a child. Mr. Selwyn tells his children, no little girl or boy ever went to bed on Christmas Eve without hanging up a stocking, which they expected would be filled with gifts by the good Christ Kingle. They were always up bright and early the next morning to see what was given to them. The good children were always sure of having their stockings filled with cakes, sugar plums, and little presents by the Kris Kringle. But the naughty ones would find a rod thrust in theirs by old Belsnickel. The Kris Kringle was regarded as a kind of fairy or good genius, such as you read in fairy tales, who rewarded good children, and the Belsnickel was an evil genius who punished the bad ones. A generation earlier, in other words, it would have been easy to deal with a girl like little Mary Selwyn if her parents were trying to teach her a lesson. She would have received her just deserts from the Belschnickel. But Mr. and Mrs. Selwyn are just as interested in their daughter's inner life as they are in her actual behavior. They want her to learn how to control even her selfish expectations. Mr. Selwyn tells her at the very end that you ought to submit with cheerfulness to your situation, to submit rather than to nag, and to do so with cheerfulness. They want her to be truly, spontaneously grateful. Not only is young Mary to make no demands for parents, she is not even supposed to harbor any desire to receive them. Let me try it again. I misread. Not only is young Mary to make no demands for presents, she is not even supposed to harbor any desire for them. As a practical matter, of course, that was impossible. What was possible was only concealment. Stories like the Christmas tree, if they were actually put into practice, secretly encouraged children to behave hypocritically, to pretend they didn't know or care what their parents were really planning. Ultimately, the effect of such stories was to encourage children to deny, even to themselves, their own selfish feelings, or else to feel guilty about having them. Children were being encouraged to feign, first to their parents and then to themselves, both selfless indifference and spontaneous joy, to act as if they enjoyed their presence only because they were expressions of love, because they were affection's gift. In the next reading, I'll finish up the chapter and probably begin the next chapter after that. Not enough time to finish it up today. But we're coming up on a chapter I've really been looking forward to, an interesting one, which is Tiny Tim and Other Charity Cases. Now we'll pick up on some perfect children in the next reading and then go into that chapter. I hope it's a blessing to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This book will one day be out of print if it's not already out of print. And the only place you'll be able to sit and listen to it will probably be this channel, unless they have it on audiobook, which then you could listen to it on audiobook. But this channel, that's what we do. We read books, we look at scripture, we comment on scripture, we look at other religious text and we comment on them. And I try to educate and to grow right along with you as we're examining these things. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time here on the C Files.